Pay attention to the three men in orange vests standing outside the brick building on Maple Street. It's 9:47 a.m. on Tuesday, November 14th, 2023. The building is scheduled for demolition, a routine inspection before the wrecking crews arrive. The structure has sat vacant for 18 months, windows boarded, a chain-link fence marking its perimeter. One of those men is Roland Pierce, a city building inspector with 22 years of experience. He's seen hundreds of condemned structures. This one should be no different. By 11:15 a.m., Pierce would place a call that would trigger the largest underground criminal investigation in the city's history. This was not a routine inspection. It was the discovery of an underworld. The building at 847 Maple Street had been a commercial laundry facility until March 2022. The business closed after a fire damaged the second floor. The owner, a holding company based in Delaware, stopped paying property taxes. The city acquired the property through foreclosure. Standard procedure dictated a final inspection before demolition to check for hazardous materials, structural integrity, and utility disconnection. Roland Pierce arrived with two colleagues, Martin Cho, an environmental specialist, and Felix Grant, a structural engineer. The morning was cold and overcast. Pierce unlocked the padlock on the front entrance. The interior smelled of mildew and charred wood. They split up to cover more ground. Pierce took the basement. Cho handled the main floor. Grant climbed to the second story to assess fire damage. Pierce descended the concrete stairs with a flashlight and clipboard. The basement was unremarkable. Industrial washers still bolted to the floor, rusted pipes, water stains. He was documenting the boiler room when he noticed something inconsistent. The basement was smaller than the building's footprint suggested. Pierce measured the space twice. The basement ended 20 feet short of where it should have terminated. He walked the perimeter again, studying the walls. On the eastern wall, behind a collapsed metal shelving unit, he found it. A door. Not boarded. Not marked on any building plans. A solid steel door with a deadbolt, painted the same gray as the concrete walls. Someone had tried to conceal it with the shelving unit. Pierce called up the stairs. Cho and Grant joined him. They moved the shelving. The door was locked from the outside. Pierce used bolt cutters from his truck. The door opened into darkness. The flashlight beam revealed a tunnel. Not a crawl space or utility corridor. A tunnel tall enough to walk through, roughly 7 feet high and 5 feet wide. Walls reinforced with timber supports and corrugated metal sheeting. The air was stale, but not foul. Electrical conduit ran along the ceiling. There were lights. Pierce found the switch. Bare bulbs illuminated every 30 feet, extending into the distance. The tunnel stretched beyond the range of visibility. This was not part of any city infrastructure. Pierce had inspected buildings in this district for 2 decades. There were no subway tunnels here, no steam tunnels, no utility corridors on record. This tunnel should not exist. At 11:15 a.m., Pierce called his supervisor. 20 minutes later, he called the police. Detective Cameron Walsh arrived at 12:40 p.m. with 2 patrol units and a sergeant from the city's organized crime unit, Lucas Hammond. Walsh had worked property crimes for 9 years. Hammond specialized in trafficking cases. They entered the tunnel. Pierce remained at the threshold, documenting. The tunnel extended south, away from Maple Street, beneath neighboring properties. Every 50 feet, they found branch tunnels leading east and west. The system was not makeshift. It was engineered. 300 feet in, they found the first chamber. The room measured approximately 15 by 20 feet, plywood flooring, camping chairs, portable heaters, empty food containers, sleeping bags, a chemical toilet in the corner. On one wall, someone had mounted a map of the city's downtown district. Red pins marked locations. Walsh photographed everything. Hammond noted the sleeping arrangements. 4 sleeping bags, all recently used. They continued deeper. The tunnel system spanned 6 city blocks. They discovered 11 chambers in total, each serving a different function. Some were living quarters, others were storage. In Chamber 7, they found inventory. Cardboard boxes stacked floor to ceiling, labeled with handwritten codes. The boxes contained merchandise still wrapped in retail packaging, electronics, designer clothing, pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, all items that could be sold quickly for cash. The street value exceeded $2 million. In Chamber 9, they found the distribution center. Folding tables held packaging materials, shipping labels, scales, and a laptop connected to a portable Wi-Fi hotspot. The laptop was password protected. The forensic team would later extract data showing connections to online resale platforms and international buyers. In Chamber 3, they found evidence of human occupancy on a larger scale. 23 sleeping mats arranged in rows, personal belongings stored in plastic bins, toiletries, clothing, identification documents. The documents belonged to people from 7 different countries. Ages ranged from 19 to 47. None of them were reported missing. Many had entered the country legally on work visas. This was not just a smuggling operation. It was a labor camp. How do you excavate 6 blocks of tunnel beneath a city without anyone noticing? Structural engineer Felix Grant examined the construction over the following days. His analysis revealed sophisticated planning. The tunnels followed old utility corridors and abandoned infrastructure from the 1940s, remnants of the city's original steam heating system, long decommissioned. Someone had accessed these forgotten spaces and expanded them. The excavation had been done gradually, over months or possibly years. Soil removal happened at night, disguised as legitimate construction projects. Grant found permits for foundation repairs at 3 buildings along the tunnel route, all granted to shell companies that dissolved after work completion. The tunnel entrances existed at 7 locations across downtown, all in buildings owned by the same Delaware holding company, all purchased within a 3-year window, all through different subsidiary names that obscured the common ownership. This operation had required resources, expertise, and time. It was not opportunistic. It was industrial. Detective Walsh and Sergeant Hammond built their case methodically. The laptop from Chamber 9 provided the breakthrough. Digital forensics analyst Nora Fielding spent 2 weeks extracting data. The files revealed a criminal enterprise far larger than anticipated. The operation moved stolen merchandise valued at approximately $4 million annually. The goods came from retail theft rings operating across the northeastern United States. The tunnels served as a centralized distribution hub, hidden from law enforcement, inaccessible without knowing entry points. But the merchandise was secondary. The labor trafficking component was more troubling. The identification documents from Chamber 3 belonged to people who had been promised legitimate employment, warehouse work, cleaning services, food service positions. They paid fees to employment agencies that existed only on paper. When they arrived, they found themselves in debt bondage, working in the tunnels to pay off their transportation and housing costs. Walsh tracked down 7 individuals whose documents appeared in the tunnel. 5 agreed to speak with investigators. Their stories followed the same pattern: promises of legal work, transportation to the city, delivery to a building on Maple Street, descent into the tunnels, forced labor sorting and packaging stolen goods under threat of deportation or violence. The average time spent underground, 6 weeks. The Delaware holding company led to a name: Gregory Ashford, age 48, a property developer with no criminal record and substantial assets. Ashford owned 14 commercial buildings in the city, managed through various LLCs and shell corporations. Ashford was not the operator. He was the landlord. The actual operation was run by an organized crew led by 2 individuals: Walter Quinn, age 53, a logistics coordinator with a history of smuggling convictions in the 1990s, and his lieutenant, Dana Merrill, age 37, who managed the labor recruitment side. Quinn and Merrill had leased the Maple Street building from one of Ashford's companies in January 2021. The lease agreement included exclusive access to the basement. Ashford claimed he had no knowledge of the tunnel system. His lawyers maintained he was a passive investor who delegated property management to third parties. That claim would not withstand scrutiny. Building permits, utility connections, and security system installations all required Ashford's signature. The shell companies that pulled excavation permits listed him as the registered agent. The financial trail showed Ashford receiving payments that coincided with the operation's revenue cycles. On December 3, 2023, federal agents arrested Gregory Ashford at his home in the suburbs. Simultaneously, tactical units executed raids on 6 properties across the city. They found Walter Quinn in a warehouse in the industrial district. Dana Merrill was arrested at a truck stop near the state border, attempting to flee. The operation was dismantled. The tunnels were empty. The workers had scattered when word of the inspection spread. Finding the victims proved more difficult than finding the criminals. Many were undocumented or on expired visas. They feared deportation more than they feared their former captors. Some had returned to their home countries. Others had disappeared into other cities, other underground economies. Social Services Coordinator Pamela Cross led the outreach effort. Her team located 18 individuals who had worked in the tunnels. 9 agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. Their testimony provided the human dimension the case required. Marco Vega, age 32, from El Salvador, described being locked in Chamber 3 for 11 days when he refused to work 16-hour shifts. Isabel Cortez, age 26, from the Philippines, recounted being told her family would be harmed if she contacted authorities. Dmitry Sokolov, age 40, from Ukraine, explained the debt system. Each day underground added charges for food, electricity, and security services that made escape financially impossible. None had been physically chained. The chains were economic and psychological. The tunnels were hidden, not just from the city above, but from the workers themselves, who had no idea where they were in relation to the streets they'd once walked. Cross worked with immigration attorneys to secure U visas for those who testified, temporary legal status for crime victims cooperating with investigations. It was not full protection, but it was something. The physical recovery varied. Most suffered from vitamin D deficiency, respiratory issues from poor air quality, and psychological trauma from prolonged confinement in windowless spaces. 2 individuals required hospitalization for untreated infections. The federal trial of Gregory Ashford, Walter Quinn, and Dana Merrill began on June 4, 2024. The charges included forced labor, human trafficking, racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy. The prosecution, led by U.S. Attorney Fiona Blackwell, presented 847 pieces of evidence over 3 weeks. The tunnel system itself became evidence. Jurors viewed video documentation of every chamber, every branch, every entrance. They saw the sleeping mats. They saw the stolen goods. They saw the laptop spreadsheets tracking worker hours and debt accumulation. Marco Vega testified for 4 hours. The defense attempted to characterize the arrangement as consensual employment. Vega's response was quiet and direct. No one consents to being underground. The defense strategies diverged. Ashford's attorneys claimed he was negligent, not criminal, a businessman who failed to supervise his properties adequately. Quinn's lawyers argued he believed the workers were independent contractors who understood the arrangement. Merrill's defense claimed she was following Quinn's orders and feared him. The prosecution countered with financial records. Ashford had received detailed reports about the operation. Quinn's communications showed deliberate deception in recruiting. Merrill had personally collected identification documents and threatened workers who attempted to leave. On July 18th, after 14 hours of deliberation, the jury returned guilty verdicts on all counts for all 3 defendants. Gregory Ashford, 23 years in federal prison. Walter Quinn, 31 years in federal prison. Dana Merrill, 18 years in federal prison. Additional financial penalties totaled $4.7 million in restitution to identified victims and asset forfeiture of all properties connected to the operation. Judge Martin Casper's sentencing statement was unambiguous. This was not a crime of opportunity. This was a crime of construction. You built an infrastructure of exploitation beneath a city that prides itself on transparency and law. The sentence reflects not just what you did, but what you created. A shadow economy predicated on human suffering. The tunnel system remained sealed. The city filled major sections with concrete. The entry points were demolished or permanently secured. The building at 847 Maple Street was torn down in August 2024. The site is now a community garden, maintained by immigrant advocacy groups. The investigation revealed similar tunnel systems in 2 other U.S. cities, both connected to the same smuggling networks. Federal task forces are still working those cases. Pamela Cross established the Underground Recovery Project, a nonprofit providing services to victims of hidden labor trafficking. The organization has assisted 47 individuals since its founding. Funding comes from the forfeited assets of convicted traffickers. Marco Vega received his U visa in February 2025. He works in construction now, legitimate work, above ground, under his own name. He attends night classes to improve his English. He does not speak publicly about his time in the tunnels. Isabel Cortez returned to the Philippines in October 2024, using restitution funds to start a small business. She stays in contact with Pamela Cross via email. Dmitry Sokolov remains in the city. He received permanent residency in January 2025 and works as a maintenance supervisor at a hotel downtown. He testified before the city council in March, advocating for stronger protections for immigrant workers. How many people passed through those tunnels? The prosecution documented 37 individuals. The actual number is certainly higher. Some workers stayed only days. Others spent months underground. Records were deliberately incomplete. How long did the operation function? The earliest evidence of tunnel excavation dates to 2018. The system was active for at least 5 years. That represents hundreds of potential victims. Who else knew? The investigation identified 14 individuals who provided support services, suppliers, security personnel, drivers. 8 were charged as co-conspirators. 6 fled jurisdiction and remain at large. The tunnels under Maple Street were not unique. They were simply the ones that got discovered. Roland Pierce still works as a city building inspector. He conducts demolition assessments, checks basements, measures spaces. He looks for inconsistencies now. He measures twice. He thinks about that Tuesday morning in November. The door behind the shelving unit, the tunnel stretching into darkness. The moment he understood that something beneath the ordinary was profoundly wrong. The building he inspected no longer exists. The garden grows vegetables now. Tomatoes, peppers, beans. Volunteers tend the plots. Children play in the adjacent park. The ground above gives no indication of what once ran beneath it. But Pierce remembers. The city remembers. And every time a building inspector finds a locked door that shouldn't exist, they remember too. They check. They measure. They call. Because beneath the surface of ordinary buildings, in the forgotten spaces between infrastructure and earth, other tunnels might still exist. Other operations might still be running. Other people might still be waiting for someone to notice the door that doesn't belong. Pierce noticed. That's what matters most.